Hi, everybody. This is Patty Toledo. We're back with Creative Raids and Sophia with me today. Charlie, I think Charlie didn't wake up early in the morning. She's in the US and she's not a morning person. But Charlie, you're missed, so you know. And we have today Scott Prather, an old friend and like not an old friend, but not old. uh, and super experience working with publishers. And we're going to start with your introduction, Scott, but today we're going to be talking about the pitching process. And I think this is super important for a ton of developers out there. People think, like we would think that at this point people already know what to do. No, they
Yeah.
don't. But so we're gonna try to, in the next half an hour, to get to the neat and gritty of it and try to, let's see how deep we can go into this. But Scott, welcome. Say hi, introduce yourself. The microphone is yours.
Thank you, and what a pleasure to be here. I thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invitation. As you said, I'm Scott Prather. I've been doing games for about 25, 26 years. It feels like I've been doing this forever. Back to the old Java brew days on feature phones. And the biggest problem that we had there was education, telling people, hey, you can play a game on your phone. They do work. We've certainly come a long way since that point.
Very true. And so, but just for you guys also to have background, today we are really truly everywhere. Sophia as usual in Japan, Scott all the way in the US, and me in Ireland. So you can imagine that the Tetris we had to play with the time zones here to make this work properly.
Very much a
So
global show.
yes. And thank you so much, guys, both of to being so late and Scott for waking up so early. Highly appreciated.
My
So
pleasure.
I wanted to start from the basics because I was thinking about the pitching process. And one thing I get in mind is a lot of people first don't understand what pitching is and don't understand the importance of it. And I think learning how to pitch is much more than presenting a project. It's almost presenting a life. There is a lot that you can use on pitching. So let's start for the very basics. How would you define pitching, and what are the things that you believe are the most important for a successful pitch? Scott,
Sophia, do you
you
want?
go first.
Oh, I'll go first. Okay. I think pitching is a weird art form where you're not pitching your project, you're pitching yourself. And to me, it's about pitching the excitement that you have for that project.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about games and projects and pitching, there's this old idea of the elevator pitch of being able to describe your product in 2 minutes in case you're in an elevator with some fancy CEO that's going to change your life. But really, I mean, what it boils down to is you need to communicate to somebody who has no idea what you're talking about. What is the game? What is the project? And why should they be excited about it? And I think, honestly, people get so hung up on the first two that they forget about the third. And frankly, I think the third is where it's the most important. If I'm trying to describe to you, hey, this is something I'm really excited about, but I come across as very flat or very unexcited, it's hard for you to get excited about something that I can't get excited telling you about. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the pitching process is really about, I'm going to convey to you how excited I am about something else, but I want you to be excited about, but now you need to be excited about it because I'm excited about it. So as a person that's pitching, you're communicating your excitement, your joy, and your passion for the product. If that's not there, it's kind of like, who cares?
Yeah, I completely agree. If you can't believe in your own project, how do you expect anyone else to believe in it? I also think that obviously, when you do a pitch, I talk about this in my, pitching practices presentation, is everyone thinks that like one of the focuses of a pitch is to inform the other person of the pitch, but actually one of the crucial things that you can do while creating a pitch is you actually end up learning about your own project. When you are forced to answer these core questions, what is the game? What makes it unique? Who are we targeting? Who is the competition? How are we going to achieve this? What do we need? It forces you to actually internally not just understand your project better, but it also causes you to drum it down into what are the most special points, because what I say a lot of the time about a pitch is not your opportunity to dump every single bit of information. It's about the highlights. It's about grabbing the other person's attention. If you can grab their attention, you'll have all the time in the world to give them all that other information. But it's about getting that. What is it that makes it stand out? What is it that's going to grab someone's attention? So it helps you not just learn about your project, but it also helps you sort of narrow down what it is that's so special about what you're doing. Because if, let's take a question, for example, what is the USP? If you can't answer that, then you need to now go and work out what it is that's special about your game. And if there isn't something, you need to go and find something and make something special within your game, just as an example.
I agree. And one thing that I always tell people is that pitching is not exclusively if you have a project and you're trying to talk with an investor and a publisher. Pitching is something that we do every day on
Yeah.
different aspects of life. We use pitching techniques when we are applying for jobs. We use pitching techniques when we're trying to convince a client to work with you or a partner to be there. It's a constant thing. And I think people get really too much inside their head when they are pitching to a publisher because they focus on, I need to get the numbers, the data, the financials, and they forget that in the end, tackle it the same way that you will tackle everything. Is first you go from the minimum information possible that you need to give for the person to have the bigger picture, and then you can go into the details later on. You're not gonna tell your life story during a job interview, right?
You'd be
I hope
surprised.
you're not gonna do that.
I
You'd
think
be surprised.
yeah, and I think it's also much like the job interview, much like when you meet someone. I think the thing that a lot of people forget, I talk about this when I do my mentoring, and at the Big Indie Pitch and with other things, is, everyone says, oh, well, I've got a 20-minute meeting, so I've got 20 minutes. And it's like, well, you sort of do, like, as in, you technically have that amount of time, but the whole battle is won and lost in the first couple of minutes. The point being, if you can grab their attention in the first couple of minutes, yes, you probably will still have minute 15 to talk about, your finances or, anything else. But if you haven't grabbed their attention in the first couple of minutes, then you're kind of in trouble. And that goes through life. And what I always say to developers as well is be prepared for every opportunity. Like you say, we pitch every day in life. I mean, let's say you've got a new partner and you're meeting their parents for the first time. You're probably going to pitch yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? And it's much the same with your game and who you are as a studio, and that sort of thing. One example I always like to say is, which is the game's scene. What if you go to an event and you're at a party, just grabbing a drink, someone next to you at the bar, and say, hey, my name's such and such. Who are you? I'm now going to pitch myself. Hi, my name's Sophia. I'm this, that, and the other, and I do this. And you've got about a minute. You're not going to give them your life story. You're standing at the bar, but you could bump into an amazing publisher, a journalist. You could bump into someone, and they're just going to say, "Oh, cool, show me your game." They don't mean show me your 15-minute deck. They mean give me your elevator pitch. Give me a couple of minutes. So it is an art form and it is a skill. But it's also one that I think people misunderstand, that you do have to know it, but you don't always have to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of talking with a potential partner at a bar is a wonderful, wonderful idea of parallel of you're not going to go up to somebody at the bar. I mean, and the traditional idea is you go up and you spit your line that introduces you and it breaks the ice, and then you start talking.
Yeah.
That's exactly what a pitch should be. It should
Yeah.
be, here, I'm going to break the ice. I'm talking about how excited I am about this project. It generates excitement on both sides, and then you start talking. But that's all a pitch should be. I mean, I think it's funny. Patty and I were talking the other day about, when we were talking about the concept behind this conversation. And one of the things that came up was the idea of I've been on so many pitches where you get on and they say, okay. And then they put their presentation deck on the screen and then they read every
Yes.
single line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, number one, we're both adults here. We both can read. If I've done my homework coming to the call, I've already gone through this deck and I already know it because I want to know
Yeah.
what we're talking about. But you coming on and then reading this to me, would you ever do that at a bar? Would you ever sit down and be like, okay, I'm Scott. I'm going to walk you through my accomplishments and I'm going to walk you through my financial standings. Of course not.
Yeah.
You'd
You
say
would be surprised.
it would be it would be a
That's my
terrible
side.
conversation at a bar. But I mean, your point is exactly right. Like, you need to grab their excitement and convey, hey, this is an exciting opportunity for you. You should listen to it, and then build from there. And then if everything goes great, 20 minutes later, talk about your financials. If everybody wants to talk about financials, don't lead with that. You're exactly
Yeah.
right.
But I have a question though, because that's something I always wondered. And I think it varies from pitch to pitch. Of course, like if you are in the big indie pitch or in a situation that you already booked a certain scope for a business meeting and you have a certain procedure, but I always wonder how much from the beginning of the conversation, in your opinion, how much should it be about building a personal rapport and connecting with the person, even if it is a tad of small talk before you go to the business meeting? Uh, I think it's also personal. Not everybody has the same like the same likeness for small talk. But in your opinion, what is a fine balance between creating that personal rapport and then jumping into the business, or do you prefer when people jump directly into business? What do you think?
Oh,
I
please.
yeah. I think it's. I mean, personally, I like to make a connection with the person I'm speaking to. I like to because I think the thing is, if if you're gonna have a relationship with them, I mean, look, publishing, working with, a partner in the indie developer scene, this isn't like a transaction. It's a partnership. It's, you're going to be working together. You're going to be, in the mix of it together. You're going to be doing things. So, as you open with Scott, this is also about pitching you. I want to know that I can work with you. I want to know that you're friend.
Mhm.
So I want to make a personal connection. But again, it's like you say, this is an opening pitch. It's about a balance. It's a bit like when you go on a date. You don't want someone who comes across too intense. It's that similar sort of thing. I want to make a connection, but we are also here to check out your pitch and look at your game. So, bit of small talk. And then, we jump in. It's a bit like the bar analogy. We'll have a chat, we'll go through it. But if I can make a personal connection and have a bit of a chat, that sort of makes things a little bit easier later on, because we now feel that we can talk a bit more free flowing. We can break away from the
Mhm.
script. We can do other things. I only had it the earlier today. I met with someone online, and I don't know how much of everyone can see of my screen, but if I tilt my screen to anyone who's on video, you can see there's a lot of Pokemon stuff there. And someone said, before we even got started, made a comment of, "Oh, Pokemon fan," and I was like, "Yeah, I love Pokemon." A little bit of a couple of chat about the Pokemon just made both of us feel more at ease now when we're
Mhm.
chatting through other things. It's literally that. It's just making everyone feel a bit more at ease, and it's sort of, especially if you're doing that publisher chat and you want to have a longer relationship, it's also saying we could work together.
Yeah, and I'll throw two pieces onto that. One is um, also be aware culturally. There's some cultures where
Yes.
small talk is not considered polite.
Yeah.
There's some cultures where, hey, we're here for a job. Let's do this job, and then when we're completed, then we can do small talk.
Yeah.
So be aware culturally of who you're talking to. But I think Sophia hit the nail on the head. Is if we're going to work together making a video game, and video games are so hard to make. Like, being involved in the development process, you don't, if you're just playing games, you don't understand. It's so much work. It's so difficult. There's so many plates that are spinning. Everything has to go right for this to come out right. If you're going to go through that process with a partner, it's a 6 month, year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year process. Do you really want to go through a 5 year process with somebody that you can't stand to talk with, or have a conversation with, or have a lunch, have a beer with, or go to lunch with? So many great ideas that I've, over the years have come out over a beer after work, or, at lunch while we're sitting here complaining about, a completely separate project. We get, a strike of inspiration, and then you come back, and I think there's a lot of, just in social environments, you kind of, creativity tends to thrive, especially when you're not so focused on one thing. So I think building that relationship and being able to have that conversation that's not purely work related and have it be comfortable and relaxing and enjoyable, I think is super important. I mean, if you just put in 13 hours and you're like, hey, let's go get a beer, like that was a rough day. If you can't do that with your partner, it's just going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And there is a lot for us to go on the cultural side, but I wanted to add for this one also is be careful not to be too hungry. Sometimes you are it's great to have passion. It's really great that you believe in your project more than anybody else. You're absolutely right to be there. But sometimes if you're too passionate, you sound pushy, and that can also vary depending on the cultural background of the person that you're talking to. And Charlie will forgive me because I will use an example that she gave, a story that she gave me before, and she might kill me later because, but I saw that too, so I feel I can do it. Is we were in a conference and there was a person introducing her game at the bathroom. So when people
Mm,
were leaving their stalls, she was pushing the game at the face of people.
Yeah. A bit
And
too intense, that one.
yeah,
that's no
and
good.
I can understand the passion. I feel for the person, but it's like there is a place and time for things. There is a place and time to have. And my other point is, if you are in a meeting and you already know who you're talking to, great, you can be more direct. But bringing the bar analogy, if you're in a conference at the party and you meet
Yeah.
someone, remember to listen to the person as well. Figure out who is the person, what are their interests,
Yeah.
what is the synergy there before you go and shove your project into the person. Might not be the right person, it might not be of interest at all, and then you will lose an opportunity of networking just because you're pushing your project to anyone that is there to listen. So having a bit of balance of when to present and when to listen can be super helpful as well.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
and
completely agree. I mean, I'll give you one example. Is there's a couple of developers that I've worked with over the years, and for whatever reason, we've not been able to find a project to work together on. That doesn't stop them from, whenever I have like an RFP, like, hey, I need a specific type of game, or they have a new project, that doesn't stop them from reaching out or me to reach out to them. And every single time that we reach out and we say, hey, this is a really cool game, I'll give some feedback. They give me some feedback. We say, ultimately, not a great fit. But every single time we do that, that relationship is going up a little
Yeah.
bit. We're building that rapport with each other of, hey, you like these type of games, I like these types of games, you're really good at this, I'm really good at this, and we're just building that rapport. And the hope is that, okay, at some point we're going to be able to find a project to work together on, and that relationship's already built. We've already established, like, hey, it's okay, I've told them no and they've been cool with it. To your point, they weren't pitching me in the bathroom. It was, hey, do you like this? Yeah, it's really good. Here's my feedback, but it's not a good fit for me right now. And I think often if you're a developer, and I've seen a lot of these where you get that first rejection, and it's just the wind out of your sails. And I think one big thing I would also throw in the pitching process is keep in mind, like, it's not personal. It might be
Yeah.
that your game is really, really good, like best game I've ever played, but it might not be a good fit for a million different reasons. Like, publishers have, their overall budget, they have their marketing, they have other games that are coming out in that same month, or they have another game that's of a similar one, a similar style in development. It might just be, hey, it's not a good fit right now. In a month that might change. But I think, keep in mind, like, there's a lot of no's that you'll get as a developer, a lot of no's. You only really need one yes.
Yeah.
very true. One thing I wanted to add to this is also, if you build a good rapport with a, like, imagine I pitch a game for you, Scott is not a fit, but because the relationship is so good, you might know another publisher say, look,
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
not a fit for us, but look, this publisher is really looking for this kind of game. Let me do an intro, like, let me introduce you to them. And doors open when you are nice, polite, and
Yeah.
learn how to pitch
I was going to say the
properly.
same. Yeah. I was
Yeah,
going to say
completely agree.
exactly the
And
same thing.
most of the publishers we all know each other. I mean, like, wrote, the Rogue, we look for games that are a little bit more extreme and more actiony and more art. If you pitch me a cozy game, it's really going to have to be a spectacular cozy game to get through our greenlight process. But I know some really amazing cozy publishers. That's all they do. So you might
Yeah.
pitch your game into us and it might be, hey, this is just not a good fit for us because we're looking for blood and guts and swords and explosions. But my really good friend Paul is looking for exactly your game. So if you come in hot and you're pitching your game in the bathroom, I'm probably going to be like, not a good fit. If you're cool
Yeah.
and you're, say, let's go through the process. I'll introduce myself. I'll introduce the team and the project and why the game, the project is exciting. I'm going to look at that and say, man, they're passionate about their project. They're wanting to do this the right way. I'm not a good fit, but let me introduce you to somebody who might be a good fit.
Exactly. I wanted to go back there. We determined that showing passion for the project is super important. Sophia also mentioned the USP is super important to have there. What are the other things in a pitch that if I have very limited time, what are the topics besides passion in USP that you would recommend people to always have in the tip of their tongue so they can present to it doesn't matter if it's publishers, investors, or in or even co-developers or partners that can work with them later on?
So I'm mentoring at the moment on the Transfuser project, which I do every year. And one of the key things, so I always, I mean, obviously it's a very specific pitch, but I'm also coaching them in creating a pitch deck for publishers as well. Now they have more time. We tend to work on a longer pitch and then turn that into a shorter, elevator style pitch. But I sort of break it down into to three key areas. And you've got the game, then you've got the team, and then you've got the sort of the business side of the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we stick to the game side of things, you've obviously got the USP, you've got talking about the core features of the gameplay, but I think one key element that is often missed when pitching is talking about the game loop. What is it that's keeping players interested? What's key? Because it's one thing, even if your game is just like a traditional pay $10, play the game, finish it, they might think, oh no, a game loop's only for a free-to-play game or an MMO or something, but it's not, because it's what's going to keep them playing until the final hour. And that also is why they're going to still be interested in you as a developer, or why are they going to spread word of that game to their friends to get them to play it. The game loop is essential. So in that sense, I want to know about the game loop and everything else like that. And, some of the other areas that I personally want to see is you've got your obvious things like what's your ask, and why is your ask, and how are you going to achieve this? Now, so for example, one of the things I coach a lot of them on is, let's say you do want a publisher. Lots of people want a publisher. Now, when I'm scouting as a publisher, what I want to know is, what do you want from me? What do you want from us as a publisher? And I think this is quite critical, because what I don't want to hear is you just wanting money, because yeah, there's the funding aspect, but like, it's a partnership, it's a relationship. There's so much more that a publisher offers, and you become a team. And so I want to know that you understand that. And I also want to know, what do you want? So that, is that something that we can offer? Is that something that we're a good match for? So I think that's also a really critical element. There's obviously other things as well I want, but it taps a little bit into USP. But I also am interested to know how you feel you fit into the market as well. I want to know that you understand this market as well. I think it's a nuanced thing, because if you're pitching to a publisher, like you say, that specializes in your sorts of games, you don't need to labor the point about why these games are amazing, because you're pitching to a publisher who does these games. But I also want to know how you feel your game fits into that market, because this is tapping into USPs and sort of where you feel you stand out. So they're just some things that I think help.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And just a quick follow-up note. If you're going to put comps in your deck, please put a high, medium, and low comp.
Yes.
Everybody compares their game of like, hey, I'm making a first-person shooter. Okay, I'm going to put Call of Duty.
Yeah.
They made $80 billion, so my game should probably make about 60 billion. And you're like, no, there's give me a high, medium, low, and be realistic about it. I think that the best thing that I can really recommend, if you're making a pitching process, is, why is your game fun? Why would I want to play it? I get on so many calls with developers and I say, why would somebody play your game over somebody else's game? And very often I'll get, well, the gameplay system is advanced, and this and this and this, and I'm like, nobody cares. Like,
Yeah,
that's not, if the answer isn't it's fun, or this is the game I want to play, those are the right answers. Because if your game isn't fun, who cares? It's a game. Let's be honest here. We're not building like a brain surgery simulator. We're building a game that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. And if it's not that, why are you building it? And if you're not having fun playing your game, how can you expect anybody else to really find it enjoyable? I think you hit the nail on the head. You said, building a game is about passion, but also keep in mind, like, you have to be like, every single time that you get done with your game, you should jump into it and be like, man, this is fun. But oh, there's could be something that this could be more fun. I think the pitch process. Honestly, if somebody gave me a pitch deck that was, the first page was just a 30-second video of gameplay that's really exciting. The next slide was, all right, here's my USPs, here's my data points, here's the release window, here's my budget, here's what I need from a publisher. Here's where we at in the current process. Is the game not started? Are you
yeah.
a month away from being ready to release? Where is it in the process? Do you have a team that's ready to go? You could give me 8 bullet points, and then the next slide could just be, here's my contact information. That's a pitch deck. Honestly, that's a pitch deck. You're giving somebody, here's the excitement, here's the information about the project, and here's how you contact me if we want more. Like, when you get a pitch deck that's 80 slides long, that has, here's the team's history, and here's what every person in the team has done previously, and here's what why the game industry is big. That's my personal favorite, is when I get the game industry is $9 billion, and I'm like, hey, I'm in that industry
Yeah.
too. I'm familiar with it because that's what I'm doing for a living. I don't need you to explain to me why games are important. There's a lot of stuff that I think can be cut out of decks, and then, like you said, bring the relevant stuff, bring the stuff that's important to the front, and let me see that, and then let's have a conversation about it. I don't, if you have 80 slides, you're probably going to want to read them. Nobody wants you to read slides.
Yeah, I say two other things on that as well. I think, the first thing I always say is that it is that whole thing of, you're here, the pitch deck is here to grab their attention. It's not to pass on your life story. It's not a Bible. It's to grab their attention. And you want that person to look at it and go, I want to know more. Not, I know
Mm-hmm.
everything. I want to know more. The other thing I would say, this is from my experience as well, is this is totally, well, they say a picture paints 1,000 words, and I believe a video paints 1,000 pictures. Now, obviously, a big red light is, don't have quiet video time where we sit and watch a video during your pitch and there's no speaking or anything. That can kill momentum. This comment is more about if you're sending a pitch deck via email or via a website. The same thing is like, make sure you've got a really good gameplay footage or trailer or
Mm-hmm.
something, because half the time, I'm going to watch the video before I even dive into your actual pitch. I can learn a lot from this 30-second video before I even
Mm-hmm.
dive into your pitch. So that really is your first impressions before your first impressions of your pitch, if we're doing this over email or forms or anything else, like not in person. So I would say, yeah, make sure you've got a really good video that goes with this.
I agree. And I was going to add, like, if you can't translate the excitement of the game in the video, go back, take a look. If it
Yeah,
is it really exciting to play it. I agree, absolutely agree with everything you guys said. I think the only thing I still missing a lot of the pitches, and even on when the developers are talking informally about their games, is the idea of replayability. And
Mm-hmm.
what I
yeah,
mean is, like, even on the example that Sophia did, like, yeah, you pay €10, you play for X hours and the game is over. It's like, what is the impression that the game, even if it is a short-term game, what is the impression that the game will leave on me? Will I
yeah,
like it so much that I will want to play it again just because the experience was nice to me? Will I suggest it to other people, even if it isn't replayability on the sense of playing the same game, like the loop being replayable. Is the game so interesting that you want to do it again and again?
Yeah.
There is a good example of it, although my games are always kind of weird, but there is a Japanese game called Amnesia. Uh, Scott, like, it's an otome game. I like this kind of thing, and people go, but it's a beautiful game, and if it's nice, like the vocabulary is nice, is the pictures are nice, the story is it's kind of a cozy feel to it. It's not like, oh my god, there is a lot of things that people hate about the game, but what I like is I played that game several times. I paid for it only one, but I played it, and it's a game that if I just want to relax and play and have fun and have a laugh, I will go back and play that. And a lot of developers, they are so keen in creating this ultimate experience, over the top, that they forget that sometimes a game can be really simple but super enjoyable, extremely fun, and be successful as is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
totally.
there's a game that I'll give a shout out to just because it's one of my favorites. It's called A Little to the Left, and it's this little cozy game. And you know, I talked with these guys, you know, what felt like a million years ago, and they described their concept, and it was really simple. It's if you have three things sitting on the table, and two of them are in parallel, and then the other one's a little askew, you're going to want to adjust it so they're all kind of lined up. That's the whole game. I mean, literally, I highly recommend it. You know, look it up on Steam. It's called A Little to the Left. It's a fantastic game, but you're exactly right. Like I could realign those three forks so that they're all, you know, in perfect. I could do that a million times, and it would
How,
just be as satisfying the millionth time as it was the first time.
how to say you're OCD without saying that you
One
are
hundred
OCD?
percent, yeah. No, I mean it's a wonderful game. I highly recommend it. You know, I'm not working for the devs or anything like that. I just really enjoyed the game.
I mean,
I
I've given a shout out on previous podcasts to one of the indie games I love at the moment is the Dadish series on Switch. They're just these short, cute platform games, couple of hours to finish. It's adorable, it's nostalgic, got a little story going to it, made by one person. And here's the thing, I've played the first game a couple of times, I grabbed the second game, third game I bought like straight away on day of release, and now I've got the one where they add stuff all the time. And but here's the thing, because I want to play it again and again, I'm doing shout outs here like you guys are,
Hmm.
and I'm telling people, and this is how you get to the point where your little game that you made, the first one that you know that you were super proud of, and you know, and did all right, and now we get to the point where whether it's a third game or whether it's just your next game, it's not in the series, it's just your next game, you know, now we've got, you know, it's just growth and growth and bigger, and that could be working with the same publisher as well. If your game is doing really well, the publisher of course is going to be like, hey, what are you working on next, can we check it out, you know?
Yeah,
That's a bit of a
I think that's
no-brainer.
a great example. And there's been a lot of times where I'll get through a game, especially, you know, some of these, you know, the indie games. You know, we're not talking about the triple A's, you know, the Call
Yeah.
of Duties. Some of these indie games. Two points. Number one, if you're making a cozy indie game, make it over 2 hours. I
Yes.
can't. And I can't say that enough to indie devs. Anything under 2 hours, you can get a automatic refund on Steam,
Steam.
no questions
Yeah.
asked. And let me tell you, launching a game and then seeing a 65% return rate is devastating.
Yeah.
That
I've
will
been
take the
saying
wind
this as
out of your
well.
sails for weeks. Please make your game more than 2 hours. But that being said, if your game is 2 hours and it's a narrative game and you go through it and you're like, hey, there's really no replayability, but the game is really good, people will go and find the sequel. If I
Yeah.
find a game where I'm like, I really, really loved this game, and Coffee Talk on the Switch is a perfect example. Um, my wife loves that game to the point where she's like, if there's a sequel, I will buy it, no
Yeah.
questions asked, not even looking at it, because I love the dev, I love the concept, I love the game. Make your game good to the point where people want to come back and give you more money, be that DLC, be it sequel, be it another project. There's a lot of devs where I support them just because I love the work they do and I think it's super creative. And they'll come out with a project that I'm like, I don't know anything about this, but it's $11. Please take my money. Let me give you more. I want to support good devs.
Well, that That is good because that's exactly what I have. Like this game that I said is from Idea Factory in Japan, and their games are not cheap. We're talking a good 30, 35, sometimes even 40 euros for a game, but they are pieces of art. They are really like they are hand painted. They are beautiful, and it comes to a point that yeah, they have other kinds of games that are not my piece of, but when they do this kind of game that is artistic, I go for it because that's true. You create an emotional connection with the game if it is well done, and if you do it properly. I agree. I knew we would explode the times, and of course we did. But I have one thing that from the culture part that I wanted to go back because I think it's important. Like, Sophie worked with publishers and developers from all over the world. Scott, you worked with publishers in India. You're working in the US. And you have worked with everybody as well. When it comes to the pitching process, what are the, yeah, and this has a two parts. It's like what would you recommend? Keeping in mind when pitching with publishers from different cultures, because I think a lot of people think that one pitch fits all forms and it really don't, and doesn't. And the other thing is, can we finish this with funny stories that we saw in pitches, like big no-nos or just funny? I always like to finish, especially in this kind of topic. How can we finish on a funny tone? So give me funny examples as well, please.
Funny examples. I mean, I think my favorite. I had one developer ask me to sign his NDA before I saw his pitch deck, because he was so concerned that his idea was going to be stolen. And I will just tell everybody, ideas they're cheap.
Yeah,
Everybody's got an idea. Everybody has an idea. Everybody's got a great idea for a game. Nobody cares. Like, until you start coding, until you get a team and you start executing. I've said before, games are stupid hard to do. Everybody has an idea, but there's a big difference between having an idea and executing that idea. So you can have the greatest idea in the world, but asking somebody to sign an NDA before they hear it is absurd.
yeah.
True.
I mean, it's happened a few times, but I can just clearly remember, and it was like sort of like a cacophony of chaos with all the bad things coming out at once. But there was once a pitch I saw where it was a team of two, and they did this thing that I call the propaganda effect, which is they brought the game along with them, but you know they were going to play it, not to let you play it. Which the reason I call it the propaganda effect is all it leaves me thinking is, what are you hiding? Why
Yeah,
can't I
so
play
broken.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I can't remember who it was. It could have been Oscar Clark, potentially, was just like, no, let me play it. Give it here. Let me play it. Let me play it. And they started playing it. And then at that point, the other player is over because they've got the game controller, and the other person's overriding what they're doing on the computer. And then the two of them start arguing with each other. Not if it was Oscar or myself, not us. I mean, the two devs are arguing with each other. So we've got this weird situation where rather than a pitch, we've got two devs arguing with each other and someone trying to play the game with a gamepad and being overridden by the keyboard on the other side of the table. Like, no,
Oh
you can't do
no.
that. We'll take that back. And I was just like, what? I mean, what is
That's
even
impressive.
going on here? Why am I even here? It was a bit like, when when they say like 5 minutes is short, but there's occasions where it's the longest 5 minutes of your life, and it's just that was it. It was just like, how are we only 90 seconds into this pitch?
Like,
Please
we've got
end.
3 more minutes of this. Oh boy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'll use that opportunity to just say, if you're a developer, if you're sending in a build, if you're sending in a video, this is what we do for a
yeah,
living. It's very obvious if you're trying to fake it, or if you're trying to, like, oh no, it's all smoke and mirrors. We know, we've seen it
yeah,
before. You're not fooling anybody. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say, if you're trying to fool somebody with your trailer, the answer is no.
yeah,
Like, because it's dishonest. Like,
yeah.
that's the simplest way to put it. Like, if you can't be honest with somebody you're trying to do business with, that's a really terrible way to start a relationship and start a partnership.
Yeah, definitely.
And we still have to go back to the culture, but I wanted, as we went to the funny example, I want to give that. And my husband can kill me later as well, but he he was developing a game with his team, and it was pitching for Japanese publishers, and the Japanese publisher was interested in the game. And the funniest story that I have was my husband going back to the team, and the team saying, because I remember that because of what you said, Scott, saying, "Oh no, we can't work with the Japanese because they're gonna steal our idea. Let's not go to international pitches because they're gonna steal our ideas too
That's
good to
wild.
for." It's like he had the same reaction, like, "What the heck do you think you are?" It's like, no,
Like,
but
unless your
I
idea is somehow to like spin water into gold in a
Mhm.
practical way, like, no, come on. If it's a pitch, it's an idea for a video game. Your idea is not that good.
Yeah, unless you found a way to win the lottery automatically, and but
Yeah,
then you don't need to pitch it to anybody. Just win the lottery and do whatever you want to do. But
exactly right.
I made a mistake of asking two questions at once. We answered the second and didn't answer the first. So to finish this, I wanted to go. What are the things people should keep in mind if they're pitching for for publishers or investors who are from different cultures that they are? So
I
publishers in
think
India, in MENA, Japan, China,
I
in
think
general.
this for me personally, there's two things to remember. There's one, you can obviously be culturally aware and you should do some due diligence, but you also have to be prepared that you can't know everything. So the trick
Mm,
is, if you can't necessarily know everything, the trick is to be intuitive and flexible. You know,
hmm
there are big mistakes you can make, they're the ones you research. But the little mistakes you learn through experience. You learn through going to these countries, to talking to people, to have an experience. And so, if you're intuitive and flexible within the pitch and you notice that that didn't go down well, adapt, change, evolve. These are the core bits, I think, that are key to when you're doing an international pitch. And I also think this does tap back into the whole, you know, your it's like a job interview. You know, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. This is a
hmm
partnership. So, you know, they're effectively pitching to you as much as you're pitching to them, as in the publisher. So, you know, as you're going through this and you're learning, you know, you should also be thinking, can we work with these differences?
hmm
And it's not wrong to sort of be like, you know, yes, we can, that's fine, because it's going to help us grow as a team. Or maybe, you know, we're doing a game that doesn't quite match with these sorts of things. So, you know, you can come away from a pitch sort of saying, okay, that was a really great experience from a cultural perspective. We don't think this works for us as a relationship, but we have learned some things that we can take away and implement into the game to make it more global. My point being, when you work abroad, when you live abroad, the key is to be flexible and to always be ready to learn, always be willing to learn.
Uh, what I was going to say is, at the end of the day, no matter where you are, what culture you're dealing with, there's going to be some data, there's going to be some KPIs that are not cultural. Everybody wants to know, okay, how much is your game? What's the engagement rate? If you're working in something that's free to play, all right, what's your retention? What's your monetization strategy? These are all things that it doesn't matter if you're in India, if you're in the United States, or you're in China, you're in Japan. These are all data points that everybody wants to know. So my suggestion is, number one, just be respectful. To Sophia's point, you don't know what you're walking into. You don't know the person you're pitching to. You don't know their background, their experience, what they've been doing, or if they have weird triggers or whatever it is. Um, be respectful, and then just present information. If you present that information that it kind of just goes across the board, and you're saying, "Here's my game. Here's the information about the game." If they're interested, then they will come back, and then you start that conversation. But like I said, if you start out respectful, kind of no matter where you are in the world, I think you're going to get a positive response.
Yeah,
I agree. I would say to finish this is, I think the best way is always respect and kindness. Respect and kindness
yeah.
can break any cultural barrier. Like, keep y- keep in mind you don't know everything, and even if you feel the other person is being rude, keep in mind that sometimes what for you is rudeness is not really rudeness, it's just a cultural difference. take a step back, be kind, and you're gonna find middle ground. And like Sophia said, sometimes if you can't find the middle ground, that's a sign that that culture you are not, it's not even like, oh, you can't work with that. Maybe you need to have someone locally that can
Yeah.
deal with that person. Maybe it's a situation that not right now. When you have a bit more breath, you can do that. But
Yeah.
but I think this is a good point to end this.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very, very much. And this was very gendery of me. Like, people, thank you very much.
Ah, thank you.
We have to have another conversation today only with gender things. I butcher this every day, and out of still with kindness, but I butcher this. Have thank you very much for taking part of it. Thank you very much, everybody that is listening and seeing this. And we see you in 2 weeks. We're doing every 2 weeks. I see you in 2 weeks. Scott, thank you again. Sophia,
Thank you,
thank you
Scott.
again.
Ah,
Thank you. Bye, everybody.